Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Barry Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. And today I have Dryden Gold on to talk about their recent results. I've been following this company's progress for the last year and a half or so since they became a public company not too long ago. And they've made some very important breakthroughs at the project near Dryden, Ontario. And what impresses me the most about this is I always looked at this as a parallel to what is up in Red Lake, Ontario. And to put that into context, at Gold Corp, they had an orogenic gold system, and it was mined for many years near surface, moderately successful. It had its challenges. It was only about a 50,000 ounce a year producer. Then they got deeper into the system. And when they got deeper into the system, the rest was history. They 10x their production. They were the lowest cost producer of gold in the business, a tremendous free cash flow machine when gold was a lot lower than it is today. And so that is the prize. But how you get to that prize is these orogenic gold systems have what you call complex structural stories. And these structures, these deep-seated structures, and the secondary structures coming off of them are the conduits that the gold-bearing fluids use to make their way to come closer to the surface where you combine them. And I think that they've made some significant, well, quite substantial breakthroughs on the project. And I'm happy to have Trey Wasser on to talk about that today. Trey, thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, thanks, Alan. Appreciate the chance to give you an update here on where we are and where we're going this year.
So you've got a heck of a team there, led by Mora, and why that's so important again is this parallels to Red Lake and the Gold Corp success there. She worked for a number of years at Red Gold for Gold Corp and ran their exploration, found a lot of high grade gold. So she has a lot of experience in these orogenic gold systems. And two things that have recently happened that I wanted to talk about today is that you guys are getting a real good handle on the deep crustal structures, the crust structure, and then the secondary structures, which can be as important as the big deep crustal structure. And when I talk about structures, folks, these are basically cracks in the earth where the fluids that carry the gold can come up through. And a evidence of that is the success rate you guys are having in finding visible gold. You can see easily with the naked eye, and you're finding a lot of it lately, Trey. And I think that you guys are really onto something quite special.
Yeah, I think appreciate that, Alan. You're absolutely right. It's been very exciting, and we were able last year to do a nice equity raise in the fall, and then in December got the strategic investment from Centerra Gold, which was a big confirmation of the project and the team. We entered this year with a fully funded exploration budget. And so it really allowed it allowed us to expand to our own team, which is very important. So we've added an exploration manager, two senior geologists, a couple more junior geologists. And where last year we were using outside consultants for all that work. Now Maura and Anna have really selected and put together their own team, and everything's gets done a lot more efficiently and a lot and more correctly, and correctly I mean in the sense that everybody's trained now by Mora and Anna for logging and all the workflow. Um, where before with outside consultants, not they weren't doing a good job, but we would get different people every shift change, and for logging and stuff, it's very important that a lot of this stuff is done consistently. The same. There's a bit of the whole logging thing, which is there's a bit of a shorthand to it, if you will, the code, a code that they use. So yeah, that has really helped us, and of course, it's also let Anna plan a program this year, not only just 15,000 meters of drilling, but some regional work on some very exciting regional targets that we'll talk about, and also a property-wide soil till program that is very important because that's the one coverage we really don't have on the whole property is the geochem. And so and to have all of that fully funded and we've got people out developing new targets in the Gold Rock camp for next year. So it's really flowing along well now.
Yeah, well, it's got to excite those logging people when they see so much visible gold. It's quite impressive. Sometimes Trey, I pay as much attention to that visible gold as I do the actual assay grades because sometimes depending on where you split the core, some of that beautiful visible gold can end up in the tray box and not in the assay lab. But when I see that much visible gold, it tells me that you've got a very powerful mineralizing system there that's loaded up with high grade. And it just comes down to doing more work, the scientific work that our Anna and Maura are so talented at, and then that leads to pleasant surprises along the way. I think you're at that point now. I was really impressed recently when you guys started talking about the second and third order faulting, the structures, these cracks in the earth that the gold makes their way up. And understanding that is really what led to the success at both Red Lake with Goldcorp and also at Fosterville in Australia. That was really a company maker. Well, both those projects were company makers, one for Goldcorp and one for Kirkland. And That just goes to show you the prize that you guys are looking for. And I watch a lot of projects, Trey, and I just don't see very many that are realistically looking for a prize like that. And I think you guys are making great inroads into reaching that prize.
Well, yeah, and I think one other thing that we like to stress to the market is that we have a very large strategic land package here that we've put together. So it's 70,000 hectares, and it's 20 kilometers of strike in what we call the Gold Rock Camp, which I would compare to the Red Lake Camp, not just to the Red Lake Mine. I mean, we have the potential, and we're developing 10 to 12 targets in that 20 kilometers of strike away from the Gold Rock target area that we're currently working on. So we're working on one area there about a kilometer and a half, 2 kilometers square to really define, and we're really starting to define like you said, the cross structures and that are really making us able to target that high grade gold and then also we're really expanding it with all these structures that we're seeing, these multiple stack structures that are showing up as we're drilling deeper. We're starting to see these stack structures, which are very significant because it gives us a lot more targets. And again, if you're making the Red Lake comparison, when it was when they got down to that 300, about 300 meters, that they started to see these multiple stack structures. And that's what really opened up that mine. It was, they started seeing things that had no surface expression that, they just had to mine to get down to.
Yeah, you used a very good word there, open. And what these these cross-cutting structures and what they do is they are the conduit and they prepare the rock for deposits to develop of these high grade zones. And so that's that. I don't know if you use that word on purpose there, but
Well,
the rocks are open for finding high grade deposits, and you've got lots of those places,
right.
which is what I think you were alluding to there, Trey.
Yeah, let me, Morris put together a really good slide on this, Alan. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's fairly new in the presentation. So if
Yeah,
I,
why don't you share the screen, Trey, and we'll talk about your some of your stuff in your presentation. Don't forget to show us some of that beautiful visible gold.
we'll show you that for sure. But these faulting or the cracks, deformation, really events. I mean, because it doesn't necessarily have to be faults, but in essence, it's these structures that came in, and in the Gold Rock camp, uh, and again, we're seeing this in some of our other target areas, other when we're drilling, is the same evidence of these same structures. And we've always been known that we had these east-west structures. We've been telling this story from the beginning. This was actually the first deformation event, and so we call this the D1, and it runs fairly close to east-west. And basically carried the higher grade gold. That's why you see all the historic mines. And again, keep in mind, we're only looking at about a kilometer and a half area here, and it had five mines that are listed here. And the this event was, carried some higher grade gold. And then the second event was the major event in the camp. Okay, so this is the Manitou to Norwich deformation zone. It runs from the south west to the northeast. It was the major event happened, after that D1, about 5 million years, I guess. And it really created all of these north easterly structures. And at first, the known area of the camp with the old mining and the work that Manitou Gold did before us, really just, there were three main surface expression zones. In the Big Master, there was two veins, the Big Master 1 and Big Master 2, and the Elora. And that created it. That was a lower grade event, actually. I mean, we can drill anywhere on these structures along here and get 3/4 of a gram to 1.5, 2 grams everywhere. But it's where the intersections, where that created these northwesterly structures and really opened it up. And then, on top of that first structure. Now, the big breakthrough for us, and we had a outside geologist, John Fingus, who worked for the last few years at Newfound Gold. And he spent last summer out there really studying the tectonic evolution out there and mapping everything. And he's probably if not the best, one of the best in the business at doing this. And so what he has defined for us is yet a third structure now. So this is what we call D3. You can see it here. It's and of course these are very simplified. These don't run straight across and straight up and down. They
They
it's
move
not that
around a
it's
bit.
not it's not that quite that easy. But boy, when you start to look at how successful we are now, that we've got this third vector point, if you will, uh,
Yes.
because as you say, it's where these everything intercepts, and where the D1, which is higher grade gold, and we're really beginning to believe that the D3 was what brought in the most gold because the 53,000 gram per ton hit that Manitou drilled was down here. The
Yeah,
Laurentian mine was the highest producing mine in the camp and produced it over just under a half an ounce. And you can see where we've been doing all the work at Jubilee and where we've just hit these high grade structures are lining up here. It just all is kind of falling into place here. And
that's
this makes it, like I said, it's not quite this easy, but for at least for the novice
demonstration.
to understand it, I think this is a great slide.
Actually, this is the key to what I'm talking about as far as understanding the cracks in the earth, if you will, that are the conduits for the high grade gold. And I'll point out a few things on that third slide. You'll see that there's the hatched lines, the Manitou Donorwick deformation zone. So that's your big crack in the earth, if you will. And then you'll notice that there's a series of, in red, parallel structures. And that's what happens when these big, cracks happen, is they tend to create others around them. And you can see that there's a whole series of, in red there, structures that are uh, parallel to the Manitou Donorwick deformation zone. And then you have the tan ones that are east to west, and they're coming towards the deformation zone as well. And then you've got these black ones, and these black ones are the what I think are very exciting because they look like they're radiating off of that deformation zone. But then, as Trace said, look at how the high grade uh, um, lines up with all of those red structures and the black ones. And this is what I think is the breakthrough that will lead to tremendous success on this project, because understanding all of this, as Trey says, it's kind of it's not precisely the way everything goes because things tend to move around a little bit. But you'll notice that where those blacks and those reds are cross-cutting, and in the tan colored structures, that's where you're getting the old mines and a lot of the visible gold.
Yep, it's actually right. And something interesting, to point out too, is that, with the previous operator only really assayed the quartz veins in here that ran on the big master system. And what we did is we did, of course, full logging of core and then also full assaying. And what we discovered last year drilling over here at Big Master is all of these structures that don't have surface expression. These are the dotted red lines. And, at first we thought they were last year we called them a hanging wall and footwall structure, right? And they're in the sheared basalts. And when you get into a high grade area, they can be, well, as we'll see, very, very high grade. So, we kind of had this thesis and we didn't know how much it went. So when drilling at Jubilee, where we did most of our drilling last year, and we were having to drill off the patents. So we were drilling way down here from the south. I almost wish the patents were drawn in here. The patents, for some reason, to the north here on Elora were dropped. It obviously used to be patented because you have two mines on there,
Right?
but we were having to drill, and so we weren't really getting on the right angle where we could start to drill these structures, right? And
Okay.
this year, early this year, we got, in one of our three permits that we were granted for exploration in the district, we were able now to move up and down the LR structure to the north. So the first hole that we drilled into the Jubilee hit a hanging wall structure that and I will now show you the picture of there. Here's the
Wow.
visible gold and how pretty it is. And very important because we talk about this regional folding, here, and you can really see the quartz veins folded into the basalts here, and how the gold, the high grade gold, is pooled at the apex of those folds. You can really see it. Here's another piece coming up now. You see it right on the at the
Great.
apex of that quartz folding. It's just, it's to me, being a non-geologist, and I've been talking about this folding on a regional basis, and of course, once you start to see this folding, and it gets much more exciting. And of course, that to say it into kind of your terms, basically, if you think about these quartz veins, if you bend it anything like that, it's going to crack at the apex there. That makes the opening that really allowed the gold to fill into the quartz in a big way.
Yep.
Now, so this ended up being a new hanging wall structure, or that had no surface expression, that ran 301 grams per ton over 3.9 meters. So a
Wow.
significant structure running parallel again to uh, here to the Jubilee, on the main Elora structure. And now, just yesterday, we announced that we stepped back a little bit further, and we hit yet another hanging wall parallel, or another structure parallel, that had the visible gold in it. We don't have assays on that, but these structures, and again, it's very similar to what they hit at much deeper levels, I might say, at Red Lake. But when we went up to Laurentian Mine, and we were really looking for this one hanging wall structure up here. And so we drilled this hole here that's got the blue star on it, and it hit high grade, not over a big surface, but it was like 28 grams over half a meter. And then when we got to the main structure, we hit the old workings of the mine, so we had to pull out. So we wanted to drill a hole just to test the geology here. So they stepped out to the south, and probably too far to the south. They actually got down here south far enough that they would be below the old workings. And we moved over and drilled from the footwall side. So we went through a footwall structure, which we had not seen before. We then hit the hanging wall at about 300 meters down hole. And then we kept drilling, and we hit another hanging wall, another hanging wall. This actually needs to be updated. There's actually three here
Okay.
going across, and substantial structures there. I mean, these structures are running. Uh, One was 10 meters, and as you remember, the Elora main structure is running anywhere from 4 to 12. But we had one that was 10, one that was 6, and one that was 3. So very substantial. And then when we came down to test this Pearl target, which is a real wildcat, we were just using this vectoring here to try and find a high grade shoot here at Pearl. We knew we had all three of the deformation zones intersecting here. So we did hit a footwall at Pearl. We then hit the main structure, and then we hit just a few meters away, actually, from the main structure, which ran 8.8. So that ran in the 25 grams in the high grade, in the over zero point 0.5 and meters, and then 7.12 over 2.6, and then over the whole uh, width, the 8.8 meters, it was 2.2. So but this structure, Alan, that we hit on a few meters away underneath with no surface expression was 16 meters wide. Now,
Wow.
we didn't hit the high grade in that, but it
Yep.
ran it ran consistently 0.65 grams over 16 meters, and not there was no core to that. There's no smearing in that. It was
Yeah.
just, I think the highest grade all the way across was maybe a gram and a half. So very substantial structure there. And so when you start to add this up, and the new thesis, which we will be testing very soon here, in fact, maybe one of the next drill holes, is we believe these structures run completely across between the Elora and the Big Master. And so
A
we will be
series of
drilling,
them, right?
pardon me?
A series of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. Now, keep in mind, when we found these last year at Big Master, this was not deep drilling. So, and up here we hit three structures at Laurentian between 300 and 400 meters. We hit 25 meters of stacked structures in there. So we'll be drilling deeper across here and showing the market here. We believe that these structures run all the way across, which means that this Manitou to Norwich deformation zone was tectonically a much stronger, you know, uh, event than would be indicated from just the surface expression of the veins.
Well, the gold can also tell you that as well, that this is a powerful system. Now, I think that what is not well understood by a lot of people when they look at an orogenic gold system like this, Trey, is that these lenses of gold mineralization, they not only are they affected by, let's say, what's happening laterally, but you vertically as well, where you go deeper into the system and you can find two things happening. The grades get higher, which is exactly what happened at Gold Corp. Plus, secondly, that these on a vertical sense can, just like they do on a lateral sense, is they pinch and they swell, okay, and sometimes they blow out into what are called not deformation zones, dilation zones.
Mhm.
And it's those dilation zones that are where the rocks open up, 5, 10 meters, and they can have because they opened up like that, they can have serious size to them in the sense of very high grade gold. You don't need a tremendous amount of size, but when you're describing that, I keep on thinking about the pinching and swelling at depth, the grade potential at depth. But to lead you down there, you have to understand these structures, these cracks, and you guys are getting a great handle on that, Trey.
Well, Alan, there's one other thing too, and we make this comparison on this slide to the Red Lake. And this is the cartoon that Maura drew for me when she first came to work and was so excited because she saw this comparison. And the third factor in here, other than the three structures, is this regional folding. And this
Right.
is very significant as well in
Actually,
these kind of
I'm going
systems.
to interrupt you there, Trey, because I want even you look at this folding that you're talking about, even in that drill core, you can see evidence of microfolding. So these patterns have a way of repeating themselves in the rock, right? Like you've got this big one that you can see at surface, this big fold. But then if you look at your drill core, you showed us earlier, you can see the same pattern happening in that little drill core right there. You see,
Yeah, well, of
uh,
course you see it. It's like I said before, seeing this core for me, being a non-geologist and having talked about this regional folding and look at that folding in there and where the gold is. How exciting this was for me to start to see this folding going, wow, that's what actually happened. Now, of course,
it's like nested folding. It's like it repeats over and over. It repeats on a big scale that you in your earlier map, and then it repeats. You can see it in all over the place in that core.
Well, and look, that's what's so exciting too, because this map here, we are only working in what we call the Gold Rock target area on
Right.
one and a half kilometers up here, where we have 20 kilometers of strike in what we call the Gold Rock Camp. And you can see the folding is consistent, the cross structures, and we have targets to the south that are at various stages of being developed and getting drill ready. And then as you go to the east side too, it's very interesting because this folding seems to be that's on trend is just more of a function of the main structure. And when you get to the east, you don't see that. Although if you look at up here, what we call our Gold Cliff target, there's a significant fold up in here.
Yeah.
And that everything starts to run more east-west as we get to the other side. So we'll go over
And
that.
this only represents a portion of your project area.
Oh, let me exactly. So let
Oh,
me.
go back there to that core. This is what I love to see, folks. Go back a couple slides. You were just, no, no, in your presentation there, you go back a couple slides there. Look at all of that visible gold. And again, you can see the folding, the micro folding, if you will, in that core. And look at how the gold that's a tremendous amount of visible gold.
Now, of course, what the exciting part is that we know we have these regional folds that in this the previous slide there, those folds are 4 to 5 kilometers across, right?
Right?
Here we're looking at inches of
Inches.
folding.
Yeah.
When we find, I shouldn't say if, but when we find some of those more regional folds, I mean, if we see a fold like this that say is you know where it's folded and the fold is even a kilometer across, I mean, that's where you hit obviously incredible zones like they hit in the very high grade gold
Red Lake.
at Red Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
And here's some more. This is the more recent. This is from yesterday's press release. So again, you really see the folding in there and the visible gold in this. And this was on yet a second structure here. The first structure here is where the high grade in the video is. But these two are coming from two different holes that pierced yet another structure. Uh,
Wow.
uh, uh, West of that high grade hit. So, we continue to show these, and like I said, we think these will just continue to run all the way across here and give us literally dozens of targets in just this one area.
Yeah,
But
and that
let's
area is
start to
only
talk about the potential of this whole property, Alan, because it really is kind of crazy how the potential we have here. So we will be drilling this year. Of course, this is where we're drilling right down here now. And
at
then,
Laurentian, El Oro,
right,
Jubilee,
this
Big
area.
Master,
So
right?
2 kilometers to the north, John last summer mapped out this mud lake area.
Okay.
And we see the same three surface expressions of the veins. We see the same three deformation or faulting events. And yet it's 2 kilometers away.
Yeah.
We then have another target that is he's working on now this summer, another kilometer to the north. So one of our goals for this year, and as I said, we've got then another 15 kilometers to the south with 10 more targets in different stages of development. But if we this year can go up to Mud Lake and show that if the periodicity is the word that they use in the red, more used they used in the Red Lake camp, is that we just and if you look at this at the Red Lake mine to the Campbell mine, the Coconut mine, that's 8 kilometers. If you go all the way over to Madsen and further west, I mean in
Another
West Red
10,
Lake
20
area,
kilometers.
you're
Yeah.
looking I mean we have if if what we have really looks like Red Lake, we just don't own a lookalike to the Red Lake mine. We have, we own the whole Red Lake lookalike camp. And so this will be a very important catalyst for this year. If we can start to show periodicity and that we can make discoveries in more of these areas as they pop up. And of course, we're using the geophysics and then the ground mapping. But, you know, and
Trey, I'm very fluent in geospeak and also in breaking that down. And what Trey is describing when you use the word curiosity is that just like earlier when we were talking about the folds and how they repeat, okay? There's a pattern that keeps on repeating. And you don't just see that at the large scale on surface, you also see that down in the micro, if you will, inside the drill core. So those patterns in the rocks, they keep on repeating. And what Trey is getting at, and Mora is getting at when they talk about curiosity, is these patterns are repeating. So you've got one set of patterns, if you will, at the Laurentian mine, the El Oro, Jubilee, Big Master. Then you just go 2 kilometers up and you got another repetition of this pattern where it is identical to what you're seeing at the southern end of this map. But all along that Manitou Denoric deformation zone, it could just keep repeating over and over and over, and likely will. You can see this on a about a 8 kilometer window there on the left of the repetition of the secondary structuring and the folding and all of this sort of stuff. So that's tremendously exciting, Trey, what you're talking about there.
Yeah, I'd also point out, Alan, while we're on this slide, is that this is what really made the Red Lake mine, and we talked about it earlier, is when they got down about 300, 400 meters, they started seeing these stacked structures in here. And they had, like 10 of them. They called them hanging wall 1 through 10, right? And that's when this mine really got interesting. And of course, all the high grade came in these structures as you pointed out, when they got down 700, this is where they really start to hit the bonanza stuff in here, what's in the black and the red.
I
So
think the statistic is that about 1 kilometer underground, they started hitting 2 ounce per ton material, and it just kept on going and going and going.
right, that's so yeah, very very exciting, and again, the analogy to Red Lake just keeps growing the more work we do there in the camp. But let's shift gears here too and talk about this regionally, because we've made some real progress on some other targets, and we were able to get three uh, exploration permits this spring, which speaks again to the team. It also speaks to our great relationships with the First Nations there, that these permits flew through. But we've got the permit to do the extension drilling to the north in Gold Rock at Mud Lake and beyond. And then we got a permit for down at Sheridan and one for over at Hinman. And what is so exciting about this is because we really think we have a district play here too, that we would compare more to Timmins or Val-d'Or, in that Sheridan and Hinman are both completely different deposit models. Sheridan is an ultramafic host instead of the lode, like Gold Rock, and Hinman is in the granodiorite host. And then of course up in here is where Next Gold has their deposits. Now they have two main ones, Goliath, which is in VMS. So we already know there's four deposit styles in this district.
Huh.
And then of course they have Goldland, which is in the granodiorite, very similar to Hinman. So we spent a lot of time
And
last year.
can you go back to that map? Zach Flood is in your area there somewhere too,
Yeah,
isn't he?
well, Zach, and they have this property. I'd have to go back here a few maps and I can show you.
So you got at the north end, you've got Frank Juster and his companies, and then Kenorland is doing some great work on a lot of their projects, and that company's run by Zach Flood, and he's a real brilliant geologist and has a great team. And it's interesting to me that to the north of you got Frank Juster's company, and to the south and to the east of you, you've got Zach Flood coming in there. So you guys are kind of making this a new exciting area, and you guys got a lot of great ground in that area.
Yeah, we have the best ground, there's no question, because here's this map really shows that Manitou to Norwich deformation zone.
Right.
And literally you want to be a kilometer or two on either side of that. In fact,
Exactly.
this property here that Kenorland had, they did the soil till, which is their first pass, and the only place they got any love was down in here. So they actually are probably going to drop this property,
Hmm.
tell you to be honest with you, but they also own everything on this. You can see them starting to be here on the map
Yep.
down to the south. They
Yep.
have staked everything for about, I think it's about 30 kilometers to the south along this same deformation zone that they'll be working on. So
Oh, great.
the as I mentioned before, when we get to the east side of the deformation zone, so this would include Sheridan, there really starts to be a more of a an east-west uh, control. And while we still see some of that, the folding is running now also to the east-west. As I said, this is an ultramafic host. This property had ground samples as high as 600 grams per ton, 617, several over 100, which
Hmm.
are unheard of here. Manitou drilled this just a little bit, and they were drilling it on the same orientation as the deformation zone, like gold rock. And we've mapped it and think they were, and actually seeing some studying their core, which they didn't do. They didn't log their core. So just in going back and looking at their core, we were able to kind of establish that they were drilling this, on the wrong orientation. Now,
So the
a
problem
few
with that, folks, is if your key structure is sort of north to south, if you will, and you drill right beside it in the same orientation, you could be just meters from hitting it, and you just followed it right down the wrong angle. You're
ex
not optimally drilling at an angle that you want to be drilling on,
no.
and so that's a great observation and breakthrough as well. Trey. You can more optimally drill what you're looking for.
Now, and so I will point out that they hit on two holes, the best of which, and that's where they actually, like as you pointed out, and they actually clipped it a bit. So, it's not like you can't hit it going that way, but your odds are very low, and generally you're going to be drilling alongside of the structure rather than through it. But
Right.
they did hit half an ounce, 15.4 grams over 5.5 meters. So we are actually, we've just located a drill rig down there now. So we'll be moving the crew down. We're not going to run two drill crews, but we'll have a dedicated rig down at Sheridan, and we're going to put some first pass holes into that. And the structure on the surface is very juicy looking, and again, the ground samples, the grab samples are speak for themselves. So we're excited to see this and make hopefully a whole different discovery of a completely different deposit type and
Hmm.
have a real project, a lot of future there. Then
Wow.
over at Hinman, uh, and this just showing some more of the work that they've done to really show these faults and this east-west orientation to come up with the mapping here. It's kind of repetitive slides, but in this presentation, we're kind of working over, uh, we're deciding on which slides we like better. Over at Hinman, now, this is an interesting area because it's over to the east. It's not on the Manitou to Norwich.
Hmm.
It does run on its own major structure running east-west, and it goes up, and actually that same structure comes up and runs through the Goliath VMS, and it's the same orientation as the Goldland deposit, which is in the granodiorite. Now, this area, the Trans-Canada Highway runs right through the south part of this property. And
Sure.
Alan, it sat there for all of history, and there's barely any, there's only history of anybody ever doing any work in there was a guy named Hinman, a prospector, came up with a few showings at one time in the 90s, 80s or 90s. Otherwise, this was so heavily forested that you couldn't
Oh,
access it at all. You couldn't see the structures. So I guess the loggers, and that's a true of all of our property. That this has been opened up over the last 25 years with from the paper mill that is in Dryden. In the Hinman area, they decided if they could take these logs to the on the Trans-Canada Highway to the mill, they'd just take every single log. So they clear cut this about
hmm,
3 years ago. So we got it and we flew a drone over it and we saw these structures. And of course, what they did is they took every tree, and when they take all the trees, they scrape most of the cover off, and then
right.
they cut their roads across
So
it.
they opened the rock up for you.
And we could see all these structures. So we ran the geophysics on that and came up with 9 targets along here. And this is the LiDAR map here. But we only got to test 3 of those targets last year, but got had very good results, 34 grams per ton, several between 5 and 15 grams per ton. And so we have, as we speak, Alan, a separate crew in there, Fladgate Geosciences, and they're doing testing the last of the 6 targets along here. And then what they're doing, and you can see these structures on the LiDAR that they basically run as much as we can see, about 4 or 5 kilometers long and about a kilometer to a kilometer and a half wide. And so what we're going to do here, or what Fladgate is doing, and again, this is results we'll have by late summer, early fall,
And
is
there
channel
again, you
sampling.
can see the quartz in that inset picture there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
And that's right at surface, Trey?
this is right off surface. Yeah, this is what we're
Wow.
seeing there, and it's a stockwork, quartzy stockwork in the granodiorite rock. So
Huh.
we're going to channel sample this to see how big of a footprint we have. We know there's high grade gold on the edge here. But we're going to channel sample it to see what kind of a footprint we have of grade at surface. This would be an open pit target like Goldland, but again, completely different from what we're doing at Gold Rock or at Sheridan.
Right.
Uh, and again, like I said, we're drilling Sheridan here in the next few weeks. Their channels starting to channel sample, I believe, next week at Hinman. This is all stuff that I'm talking about that's fully funded for this year, and we will know the results of these catalysts, this fall.
Wow.
This isn't, I'm not talking about stuff we might do over the next couple of years. This
Right.
is all things, these are catalysts that are gonna be in the market yet this fall.
Wow. So you guys got tons of catalysts.
Yeah. And then,
Wow.
like I said, we're doing the till substrate sampling just to get the coverage and kind of learn more about the property, especially to the north. That'll also help with the over at Hinman, but and then looking for the where the extensions would be down at Sheridan, and as I pointed out before, is that this is all work we're talking about. Then we've got Sheridan, Hinman,
Okay,
actually.
folks, so at the at the right side there, those are the ones they're focusing on right now. But as you go to the left, look at all of those targets that they're developing. So they've really got a pipeline that can move towards the right into where El Oro Extension, Big Master, all reside now.
Right, exactly right, Alan. So, El Oro Gold System, the extensions and the Big Master, that's all in that what we call the Gold Rock target area, that 1.5 kilometer area where
We were
we're
talking
really
about,
focused.
yeah.
Then Sheridan is drill ready, so that's being drilled here in the next couple of weeks. Mud Lake is drill ready now. And then we've got some southern extensions on Big Master that are on the patented claims, so we don't need permits for to start testing those. Then the Hinman channel sampling. The channel sampling at Hinman, if it's successful, will obviously move Hinman to a drill ready target because if we have a big enough footprint of that stockwork granodiorite, then we'll drill test that for depth, right?
Hmm.
And then, of course, all of these others are to the south in Gold Rock. We talked about we have the one new one further north of Mud Lake, but then the rest of these are all to the south and east, and all at different stages
Stages.
of being developed, so that we get them drill ready and prioritize them as the work gets done. These when they get into this area, we're very selective of the ones that move to drill ready.
Well, the ultimate prioritizer is the truth machine, and that has a way of leading you where you can really see what's prioritized. And wow, it's pretty amazing all of that potential gold, and it just goes to show you what we were talking about earlier about how these systems repeat. They don't just repeat at the surface for big areas, they also repeat as you follow them deeper into the system.
Well,
And I see the smiling team there, Trey.
yeah. Well, and look, I think you're exactly right when you talk about gold rock is especially that repeating that we're seeing. But when you talk about Sheridan and Hinman,
Yes,
and
you
then
got a whole different,
you consider that the Goliath project of Next Gold is in VMS. What you have is much more like a Timmins camp or a Val-d'Or, where you have multiple deposit styles. You have mines that might be 5, 10, 15, 20 kilometers from each other, but they're in completely different deposit styles. And basically, what it means is this camp, we think, or this district, was so generously endowed with gold that it just doesn't matter which host rock you're in. It all got high grade gold shoved
well,
into it.
what you're describing there is a surface expression of what is happening at depth. And it doesn't really matter what kind of a system you're looking at. It's all about structure, structure, structure. So when you have these events that are happening at depth, like a VMS that Troy is describing, it's a volcanogenic massive slide. It's a volcano, okay? But it all of those fluids, all of that has to come up structures, these deep cracks in the earth. They need the metal fluid, the metals bearing fluids need a path of least resistance. And that is all of these structures that keep coming up in whichever you're looking at Hinman, you're looking at Sheridan, you're looking at the big deformation zone, and that map is a perfect example. You see all those black and hatched lines there. That's cutting through Hinman up into where there's a mine being developed. It's cutting right through from north to south. Gold Rock, Sheridan has the part of that Manitou Norwich deformation zone. You've got all the right. You'll see all those green rocks there, folks. That's the old rocks that are also important for these various types of deposits, these VMS deposits or orogenic gold systems. And so, yeah, it's pretty phenomenal, all the targets that you have, Trey.
Yeah. It's an amazing property. I mean, we're just so lucky to have, put it together and have something with the infrastructure that we have is so, it's so easy for us to explore now. As I mentioned, this there's really two because a lot of people ask me, Alan, the first thing they say is they say, well, if you're seeing gold like this, now we don't talk about this. Of course, this we didn't drill this, but this was on the big master system there in the Gold Rock target area that Manitou drilled, the 53,000 grams per ton. So we know there's some incredibly high grade here too.
Yeah.
And when you look at this area where it sits, I mean, the Highway runs right through the north, of course, as I said, into the town of Dryden. Then Highway 502, you can see it here. It snakes right down through the middle, right through the Gold Rock camp. And then it skirts the whole eastern side of the property by Sheridan here, heading down to the Rainy River mine.
Holy moly.
So, this property, because of that access on the highways to the mill that's been operating for 20, 25 years, this property, which you pretty much was very difficult to explore, is now we access everything with logging
Well,
mines.
and
Drive right to the
it also, can you go back to that slide?
yeah.
So a couple other reasons why this, the potential was known for a long time. But as Trey was describing, a lot of that was covered by trees and the rocks weren't really exposed, and it was sort of a patchwork of claims, and nobody could really get in there and do this regional type stuff until Dryden Gold went in there and got all that ground into one company.
Mhm.
But I like this map because earlier I was talking about the right rock packages, and you can see in gray there up at Red Lake. It's all greenstone belt. These are very old rocks, and the same thing is happening down in Dryden. And so you've got a repetition. I keep talking about repetitions in the rock tray because here you can see that it's almost parallel to running parallel to the same thing that happened up at Red Lake. And so, Dryden could be another Red Lake, and Dryden Gold has a lot of ground in that area, in the key
The
ground.
entire camp, yeah.
Right.
And I'll tell you, so when you talk about forest too, I mean, we're talking about heavy Canadian bush. I mean, these are areas you couldn't even walk through. Hinman, you couldn't walk through it. You certainly couldn't map it because you're so busy just trying to get through the trees and brush and everything
So
that
you
you can
can't
walk
see
right
the
by a
bedrock
structure. The structure can be a couple meters away from you and you would never see it.
because you
Uh,
got all that cover of the bedrock.
and now for us today, I mean, one thing that's also point to point out is how much leverage we have because we have probably because of the access, and we now have our own facility set up about halfway between Dryden, right on the highway between Dryden and Gold Rock, where we have the core facility and cutting and everything, and everything gets logged there. The lab is right in Dryden, so the core never leaves our possession from the drill rig, and we drive right to almost every drill rig in the pickup and pick that core up. So we advertise $250 a meter all in for our drilling costs. But
Wow.
in the since we've added our own team and gotten rid of the outside consultants, it's so much more efficient and more cost efficient as well as productivity. The the last financials we actually were at 234
Wow.
a
And
meter.
that's
So
about as cheap as you can drill anywhere in Canada these days.
yeah, let me point out one other thing too, Alan, because this is it's the second reason why this property has never gotten a fair shake. Now, as you can see on this map, you see the little yellow down in here.
Yeah.
That's in the Gold Rock camp. Those are 7 kilometers of patented claims. This is where most of the historic mining was done and in the early 1900s. In fact, it was so high grade at surface, they called this the New Klondike when they first discovered it.
Wow.
Now, they only were able to mine it very sporadically there were a dozen mines in the district and all dozen were different companies with their own mills, very inefficient. And, they didn't mine down but to about 200 meters.
The
And again,
proverbial patchwork.
right. But these patented claims were owned by our good friend Rob McEwen uh,
Ah,
in Dickinson Mines when he merged to form Goldcorp.
okay.
So these patented claims were sitting in Goldcorp's portfolio for 20 some years.
Yeah.
And when Rob when Rob saw the deal and he gave us the lead order on the RTO, he said, I always regretted not exploring those properties and was angry that Goldcorp sold them to a little junior without ever doing any work themselves on it.
Well, they
So,
were a little busy up there making
well,
nothing but
exactly.
money.
And look, all they had were these little piece of patented claims. So they probably had dozens, if not more, if not hundreds of these kind of little claim packages in their portfolio that they, didn't get the light of day. But however, since Goldcorp was sitting on these, what happened is all the surrounding claim owners, which are mostly local prospectors, almost all were local prospectors, they also sat on their claims. These are guys who normally would just stake the claims. They would option them out to a junior, get some work done on them, probably get them back after a couple of years. And
Rinse
they're
and
sitting there
repeat.
with Goldcorp, knowing that Goldcorp owns the patents. They don't want to option their properties out on the cheap. So some of those guys actually sat on their claims for 10, 15 years. And it
Wow.
wasn't till 2009, when Goldcorp sold those patented claims to Manitou Gold, did these other prospectors start to drop into place. So to put this whole package together, and Manitou did some of the easy surrounding stuff, and then we've since added quite a few things, but to put this all together, it's probably a total of about 20 different things. And important to note on that purchase by Manitou, or we optioned that property for Manitou, and who was then purchased by Alamos. So it makes our large Alamos our largest shareholder because we've been making our property payments in cash in stock to Alamos.
Wow, you sure got a good group there. You got that you got Alamos, you've got what's that other one that just put money into you?
Centerra put money in.
Centerra, and then you got Rob McEwen. You got a real who's who shareholders there.
And it's growing all the time. Europac, Robert Cohen, the 18 Dynamic Funds,
Robert Quartermain, wow.
Bob Quartermain put some money in here recently. Uh, now we'll be adding a few new funds here.
Eric
Some have
Sprague.
been buying in the open market. So it's and important to note too that with this year, Alan, we made our final property payment to Alamos. So this will be the extent of they're not getting any more cash. And when you look at this property now, we have on this northern part, we have one more property payment next February, option payment of $250,000, half cash and half stock. All of this property down here, we own 100% now.
Okay.
And we not only own the property, got the property 100%, but with this property, we got an assessment credit bank of about $6.5 million from work that Manitou did. Uh, and because of the way we put the package together with these bridge claims in here, and these are changing as we're dropping this square thing here, and because we added this as we were adding on to Hinman.
Oh, I
But
wondered why.
we
So
could we
that's
can
for
apply those
assessment.
credits to a claim down here on the very south or a claim down here on the very north
Ah,
without
I
doing having to do work
I
everywhere.
wondered why you had those thin lines. So that's to tie everything together so you can use that assessment money more efficiently.
Correct. We
Uh,
don't have, we can hold this property here. Well, we could hold this entire property with the assessment bank without ever doing any work on it for about 8 years.
wow.
But that tells you, I mean, the assessment work that's due on all of these claims is, runs about $900,000 a year of work that has to be done, and the reports have to be done, and blah blah blah. Having this is such a big asset because it, you know, because of the way this property is put together, Alan, we have assessments on this property due literally 2 or 3 times a month on one property or another.
Huh.
Half a dozen claims here, 50 claims there.
I got you.
It's a nightmare if you're having to do the work and make sure you do the work in the right place, and then get the report in
But
and
you
get the
guys don't
actual
have to really
assessment
worry about
credits.
that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's it's a real challenge. So that closing that deal off and getting control of that assessment bank with the Alamos property was a very important step for us. And of course, owning this property now 100% without any real other liabilities, and in fact, the assessment credit is a real I think also speaks a lot to our ability to raise and manage funds to get this property paid off.
And to do the work strategically instead of being forced to because you need to for assessment purposes.
Exactly right, Alan.
Right.
Exactly right. You know.
I'm going to ask you if you could go off the share screen there, Trey, and we can wrap it up.
Okay.
So lots of catalysts, Trey. You got lots of drilling underway. You got more assays to come out. It looks like you're going to be putting news out for the rest of the year and into next year.
Well, certainly we of course, with the 15,000 meters of drilling, we'll probably we're about halfway through with that now. And, a lot of it is about a little over 4,000 is backed up between the logging and the and in the lab. So yeah, we'll have consistent results. Of course, we'll have the Hinman and Sheridan results as well. So we've got what we think are four major catalysts coming up. One to really show the extent of that gold rock target area as far as all the undergrounds, the hidden structures there, the stack structures, and to show that there's high grade gold in places in those stack structures as well. And then to show the periodicity as we go up to Mud Lake, to show, as you said, that repeating, because then we've got, a dozen targets in the Gold Rock camp that we call it, along that 20 kilometers of
You just
strike
about
with
called
the
it the Red Lake there. I like
yeah.
that. I like that Freudian slip there that you caught, Trey.
Well, and then the Sheridan and Hinman are both also two separate catalysts, and I think you know I, I'm expecting to be successful with all four, but if we got two of the four or three of the four, I think it's going to be very dramatic for our share price.
Now, Trey, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a question, and I hope you don't take it as too pointed. But you've got what is called in the business a target rich project, and one of the problems, or not problems, but issues with target rich is sort of figuring out which ones you're going to roll your sleeves up on. And part of that also in these orogenic gold systems is rolling up the sleeves means getting deeper into and following that system, with your sleeves rolled up and really pounding away at it to like they had. That's what led to the great success at Red Lake and Fosterville. Right now, when I look at what you're explaining there, it looks like you're prioritizing and trying to find more about all of the various targets. Do you see a point where you guys will start to roll up your sleeves and really go after the depth potential as well?
Well, look, as you know, so the answer to that is yes. I mean, if you look at the budget for this year, which was about just under $6 million, a little over 50% of that was just focused on the Gold Rock target area. Okay,
Okay.
just expanding and showing what can be there.
Okay.
Our initially last year when we started, our goal was to kind of stay at Jubilee, and this is still to go deeper at Jubilee and show depth. But the thing is, we've also hit all these stacked structures, so it's made it a little more, I mean,
It's
yeah,
expanding
we want
right
to
before your
look.
feet, very feet.
We're initially we want to be more about in that now about footprint too, because we want to show we need to find out the extent of these stack structures so then we know where these because the high grade targets, as you know, at the 3 point intersections, but as we if there's structures running all the way across, it gives us instead of what we thought were maybe 8 to 10 good high value targets for high grade gold in that area, in the gold rock target area, then but now if those structures are running all the way across, that gives us literally dozens of targets in there. So we will continue to show the potential there. As you know, drilling at depth on these systems is hard. So the odds are that you're, we're not going to sit there and spend all of our money though, just trying to think we're building a resource that, the market will say doesn't hold together or whatever. And drilling at depth, on these systems, you have to drill down along the structure so that you know you're staying in it. You can't do that type of drilling like Dolly Varden is doing, for example, on a big gold structures where they can drill a horizontal drill hole down 1,000 meters and then do horizontals to target in. We would have no luck. It would be so low probability to be able to go down a kilometer and know where that structure is because we don't know how it's dipping and pinching and swelling and so we kind of have to go down there 50 to 100 meters at a time. And so we're drilling it down as we speak, down to about 500 meters, maybe 600.
Okay.
We think if we can show the same kind of grades, and we're specifically focused on that Elora structure where we've been successful in following it down, and then identifying more all of these structures, the footprint. Then, we do want to show because look, our goal with this company is not to ever go into development. We think, and the board is, from looking at the structure of our board, whether it's Darren Wagner, myself, Christina, Scott, we've all built these experience in building these junior mining companies before and exiting them to create shareholder value. And I don't believe you do that by, continuing to dilute shareholders and getting into a development. We expect that to be exiting with an M&A transaction, this company in the next couple of years. Now we like the Great Bear model, right? They drilled for 2 years on once they found that LP zone, only 2 years, and sold for 1.6 billion. Never published a resource. Now they got very lucky, and they were good, and they couldn't find the edges of it. We'd be happy with a fourth of that, really, from here. We're a 35 million market cap today. If it's 3 or 4 but our goal in the next couple of years is to get this to a 300 or 400 million market cap and keep every Alamos our largest shareholder. Centerra is a strategic investor with just under 10%, but every major and mid-tier company, Alan, is watching us. So this is the kind of project if we can show that the district potential, and that's why we want to go ahead and put some holes
But
into.
really, Trey, to get a buyout, a company's not going to look at, okay, we got some gold here, we got some gold here, we got some gold here, we got a lot more gold over here, and that's the footprint side of things. What they're going to want to see is the development of a deposit that hangs together, and that's where I start to talk about the depth potential and understanding. So, I think to get to where you want to go, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves somewhere.
Well, look, and that's you're exactly right. But we also want to we know that in the Gold Rock camp that and where we're working in this specifically the Gold Rock target area. That's why, half of our budget literally is going
Okay.
into
Okay.
that and
So
and
you're kind
every
of,
bit of and almost all of the drilling. So of the drilling, we'll only probably drill a few thousand meters at Sheridan. All of the rest of the 15,000 meters and probably some additional drilling because we've been so efficient will go into that Gold Rock area.
Okay. So it's about
A few thousand meters maybe up like up at Mud Lake to try and show the periodicity. We're not planning in that any the channel sampling, which has been budgeted and be paid for, is being done by an outside group. So this is at Hinman. So we're everything is moving it along on you know, again, you go back to that slide of the way we move the targets up and stuff. So we have a very strategic, but look, if we hit something interesting in Sheridan, yeah, we might go down there and drill some more. And certainly if we get a big footprint in that at surface on the granodiorite at Hinman this fall, yeah, we could see ourselves, you know, but that would be a different budget. You know, that would be starting a 2026 budget
right.
and you know after another equity raise. But you
So it
know,
sounds to me like it's sort of a 50-50 mix. You're using 50% to go out there and test these other targets in the pipeline, and then 50% rolling up your sleeves in the Gold Rock area. Did I get that right?
That's pretty close. Now,
Okay.
the you know, the budget this year also includes a pretty healthy budget. It's 800 grand for the soil till program property wide. But that's a one-time thing, right? So, but that also is something that the big companies want to see. They want to see that this big district scale gold endowment. So, to some degree, I disagree with you that with this project we would have to show, you know, really something, and I think we will show something pulling together at there in Gold Rock, but the potential of a district play here is also very intriguing to these companies and the different deposit styles. So we'll see. But
Well, I've been doing this for,
if we do raise more money later this year, all of our other work, our targeting work, our mapping, in the additional gold rock targets, the soil till, all of that is already budgeted and paid for. So any additional funds, this you know, will go right into the drill rig. Uh,
well,
so
I've been at this game for 32 years, Trey, and my experience tells me that I can't remember a company being bought out for a district potential. All the ones I've seen bought out were always bought out for a deposit that had a kicker of a district scale potential. But the check is always cut for a deposit.
well, that's exactly what you know, and that's exactly why you know, we're staying focused with the majority of the drilling, and again, we're just uncovering more with this drilling, and luckily for us, keep in mind too that figuring out the extent of these stack structures along that Manitou to Norwich uh, deformation zone is it's something that we really do think will repeat itself, as you said. So
Mhm.
we will stay focused there. But for us, we're lucky in that, unlike Gold Rock or at Red Lake, where they didn't even hit this and those stack structures until they got down mining underground and at three,
Right.
400
Yeah.
meters. Most of this high grade gold for us is starting right at surface. So we're
Um,
able to identify the targets and work on them and show the potential here in a footprint style because it's at surface. You know, it doesn't all it and depth is something that to some degree will be, you know, a tremendous amount of blue sky always in this project because, you know, just in that in that Archean lode gold system, you know, drilling depth is very difficult, and we're good at it. And but you have to follow those down, and you can only drill so deep, right? I mean, you can't. You get about with traditional drilling, you get about 600 meters is probably about the extent of how the vertical depth that you can get with a drill hole, without going to, you know, some kind of a underground
Well, you can get down there about 1,000 meters with the right drill rig.
You know, pretty pretty tough in this terrain for
Right, right, right.
how far we'd have to step out. Yeah,
Got
but
it. But yeah, as you said,
if
you
we
might
if
be in a situation where you got saved about 500 meters of depth compared to Red Lake because you've got that ability to hone in on those structures that come right to the surface.
Exactly.
Right?
And obviously now we're seeing that some of them aren't to surface.
Yeah,
So, those, those are obviously going to take some more work too. But, if you go back and look at the that slide with the intersection of the three deformation events, I mean, you can kind of see how and you imagine these structures run all the way across between Elora and Big Master, how many targets we have in there and how quickly it could all add up. And a lot of it is starting at surface. So some of this, theoretically, I mean, we may not be looking at all underground mining here, but some that Elora structure has, 38, 40 gram meter material starting right at surface for a strike length of about 150 meters. So and then seems to be fairly consistent as we go deeper. So, and
but a
that runs,
150-meter pit is not really ideal.
well, no, of course
Yeah,
not. But that's it. If you look at the way that they started with Campbell on the surface, it's the idea of that you're able
right.
to mine down that first few hundred, three
Okay.
or 400 meters. You mine
Gotcha.
that down, and then you can, you're down there to start exploring and go underground. But it, I mean, I think getting ahead of us
Yep.
for where we are.
Well,
People forget with us because we get compared to every other exploration story, but we've only been public for 18 months.
right, right.
And we're uh, you know,
You're a
we're
babe. You're a babe in the woods, Trey.
oh, we've gotten a lot done though in 18
Yeah.
months and
Amazing. Actually
it,
amazing. It's
yeah.
when
So
I was thinking about doing this interview, I was thinking that, at Red Lake and at Fosterville, it took them about 20 years to get to where they understood the structures and get to the prize. And you guys are done in about a year and a half what took 20 years.
well, and look, don't forget at Red Lake too, it also took Rob doing the Gold Corp Challenge and offering every geologist on the planet $1 million prize to look at his data. And he opened up his data room and he had every geologist on the planet looking at that data. And it was the guys that, there were actually two companies that won that and had, I guess they kind of had the same idea. Now, as Mora always said, I mean, if they kept mining, they were going to find it anyway.
Yes.
But these guys, they kind of directed them, where to drill through these stacked structures. So yeah, I think and when you talk about that, the experience that Mora and Anna and the team that we're putting together, some of whom have worked at with her at Red Lake, some that worked with her at Treasury Metals, now Next Gold, and their experience from Red Lake is teaching them is helping us to do not only the right things but avoid doing the wrong things.
That's important.
It's
That's
very
important.
important. It's
Yeah.
very important.
Well, I
They
think in a nutshell, you just kind of answered why, you guys have been able to accomplish so much in a year and a half. And I think the prize is at your fingertips, Trey.
Yeah, no, we're seeing evidence of it, with just about every drill hole these days. Some is better than others, and the market is very fickle and tough, and it's hard to follow up 300 grams over 3.9 meters and that sexy core video, with anything else. So anything else is a disappointment, but. No, I think you're going to see us make significant progress this year, and and like I said, we'll continue to develop Gold Rock and the Gold Rock camp, but we think we have the potential for completely different discoveries, really, at Inman and Sheridan.
Well, on that note, Trey, I'm going to close it off and thank you very much for joining
Uh,
us today. It was a exciting talk because I'm a junkie for high grade gold, as Rob McEwen is as well, and to see all of that visible gold that you're getting your recent drilling, especially, has me thinking that you guys are at a very inflection point that will lead to a lot more success in the not too distant future. So we'll have to do this again, Trey.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And what's so exciting is that, we're seeing this high grade gold in structures that we didn't even know existed until we, kept drilling, stepping out drilling, and of course got those permits so that we could really drill from the right orientation there at Elora.
Well, your team's done a great job at interpreting everything and leading that truth machine in the right direction. And keep it up, Trey. And I'm going to close it off.
All right, thanks, Alan.
So there you go, folks. I started this by talking about context and the similarities that I'm seeing between Red Lake and Dryden, and the Dryden area, and Dryden Gold specifically. And we did a good talk about how things are repeating in the large sense of the overall project, and then down into the drill core, and that's where they're finding a lot of this visible gold. But what I really think is not as well understood about Dryden Gold is the prize that they're looking for. I kept on talking throughout this conversation about orogenic gold systems and Red Lake and Fosterville. That's the prize they're looking for, folks. Now, if those were easy to find, everybody would have one. So it takes some serious work. And so then you start asking yourself, well, who's doing the work? You've got Maura Kolb and Anna Hickens, who spent a bunch of their career underground and drilling at the Goldcorp Red Lake mine. So they've seen things that underground and in the core that helps them to, as Trey said, avoid doing what you don't want to do and focusing in on what you do want to do. And they are doing tremendous work. And I think that they are now at that point, that something I said to myself a long time ago. When they understand this system, then look out because they're going to find
Yeah.
something tremendous. I think they're at that point. But as always, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.